Hey, beautiful. It's Gina.
And Jen. And this is the Refined and Unapologetic podcast. We are so glad you're here.
We really are. And honestly, before we talk about upgrading your life, changing your life, refining your life, whatever phrase you want to use, we need to start somewhere else.
We do, with gratitude.
Exactly. Because I think somewhere along the way, people started believing they had to choose either be grateful or want more.
And we both learned that just simply is not true.
It isn't, not at all. You can be deeply grateful for your life, but still want more. More joy, more confidence, more peace, more purpose, and more connection.
And honestly, that's the entire reason this podcast came to life.
It really is, because we know what it's like to look around and think, I have a lot to be grateful for, while also feeling like something isn't quite aligned.
Or just knowing there's another version of you that's waiting to show up.
Yep. And the problem is most people never give themselves permission to admit that.
I think just because we're afraid it sounds selfish.
Exactly right.
But wanting more for your life doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It means you're paying attention.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
I do too. And I think it's so true. I think both of us learned that the hard way. Your life doesn't change because you do more, it changes because you decide better. You raise your standards, you stop tolerating things you know aren't serving you, and you start saying yes to things that matter. And one of my biggest life lessons was learning to say no to things that don't make a difference,
Yes. And all of that sounds great in theory
right?
until you actually have to do it because growth isn't always pretty.
Not even a little bit.
Sometimes it's uncomfortable, sometimes it's incredibly lonely, and sometimes it means letting go of a version of yourself you've carried around for years.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we want the space to be about, Gina, for us, for other people. Those real conversations, the conversations most people avoid, conversations that challenge you a little, maybe even challenge you a lot, the conversations that hopefully make you stop and think, maybe I don't have to stay where I am.
hmm And just so you know, we are not sitting over here pretending we have everything figured out.
Oh my goodness, no.
Not even close.
We are still learning every day. I think that's what life is all about, right? We have
Mhm.
to continue the learning process. But we both can say that we have a little more awareness these days and just a lot less tolerance for our own excuses.
Facts.
Facts.
But I think it's important that people understand why this matters to us because this podcast didn't come from nowhere.
No, it really came out of two women rebuilding our lives at the same time. Not necessarily in the same ways, but at the same time.
And Jen, that's kind of where your story starts.
It is. It is. So, a few years ago, my life looked completely different. I
hmm
was married for 25 years, and honestly, I thought that would be forever.
Most people do.
We do. And when that chapter ended, I had to learn something I'd never really understood before, and that was how to be grateful, but grieve at the same time.
hmm
So I wasn't grateful for everything that happened
hmm
to me, but became grateful for what it taught me.
Oh, yeah. And that's a huge distinction.
It is. It is. So, for who I was becoming, the strength that I didn't know I had. And then almost simultaneously, I lost my job that I loved, 28 years
hmm
for, a company that really focused on weight loss and made a difference for people. But in that moment, it felt like everything that had really defined me, not for a month, but for decades had
hmm
defined me was just suddenly gone. So my marriage, my career, felt like my identity was just gone.
Absolutely. That's a whole lot of loss all at one time.
Yeah, it was, and it was hard. But I just remember reaching this point where I realized I had a choice to make. I could stay stuck in everything that wasn't working or wasn't what was familiar, or I could start rebuilding. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty. I had to really own my mistakes and know that I'd made a lot of them. I had to stop blaming other people and just learn how to actually love myself again, genuinely, not just say it, but actually do it.
And I think people really underestimate how hard that really is.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard because it's easy to say, love yourself. Everybody says, love
Mhm.
yourself. But when life falls apart, that's when you find out if you really do. So I had to learn to give myself a lot of grace. And I've always been good at doing that with other people. Um, but it's hard when you have to give yourself grace, especially while you're trying to raise your standards. But I realized in that moment that I'd been putting a lot of band aids on my life for a very long time. It'd be okay for a minute and then not. So eventually I had to rip them off, fully rip them off and
Mhm.
heal, rebuild, start over. And here's the thing that was really life changing for me is that even during all of that, I still had so much to be grateful for
For sure.
and had to remind myself of that. I had my health, which is so important to me, my family, my friends, my daughters, Mackenzie and Addison, who I will forever say are the best thing I've ever done in my
Yep.
life.
You always light up every time you talk about them.
I do. It's hard not to because they really are my why, and I want to be a role model for them as well. That's an important part of this whole process for me. But I also realized something through that. I could be grateful for all of those things. I needed to be grateful for all of those things, but I could still want more,
Yep.
more alignment, that word that we both love that we're
Yep.
going to come back to, peace, purpose, more joy.
And then you turned the big 50.
Yeah. Like that wasn't enough. Then I turned 50.
Just a little life reflection. Throw it in just for fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Not.
But really, in hindsight, turning 50 did become a turning point for me. It's a big number, um, but it had me start asking myself, what am I really grateful for at this stage in my life? But even a little more importantly, at this stage in my life, what am I no longer willing to settle for? And my friend, that's really around the time we connected.
It is. And you know what? And what's funny is neither one of us was interested in just surface level conversation at that point.
Not even a little.
It was like, let's skip the weather. Let's skip the small talk. Jen, tell me what's really going
Yeah, and boy, did I. You probably regret asking that question now, don't you?
on.
But, what was beautiful about this is those conversations changed, both of us. They really challenged us, they stretched us. Everybody needs a friend, a
Mhm.
person in their life who can do that, for them. And they just simply helped us become better, which, back to the whole gratitude and being grateful. I don't want to overuse that, but
Mhm.
I'm so grateful that I'm sitting here with you doing this.
Yes, I feel the exact same way, but enough about you for a minute. Let's talk about your favorite subject, me.
Fair enough. So, where do we even begin,
Ugh.
Gina, with so many life changes that you've gone
Mhm.
through?
Jen, I think my story started a long time before I admitted my life was even changing. I was holding everything together: my marriage, my family, my career, my home, my identity. And really, from the outside, I think it looked like I was managing it all really well.
Yeah, I totally get that, and I think a lot of women listening can relate to that because 'cause we're really good at just figuring out how to hold it together.
Yep, almost too good,
Mhm.
because sometimes you're holding everything together so tightly that you don't even realize you're falling apart. And then little by little, my life started to unravel.
And losing your mom was part of that season of your life too, right?
Absolutely. Losing my mom was kind of the beginning of a stream of loss in my life. She had Alzheimer's. And if you've ever walked through that with someone you love, it's heart wrenching in a way that's really hard to explain, because you don't lose them all at one time. You lose them in little pieces,
Mm, mm.
their memory, their personality, the good and the bad. Obviously, their recognition and all those little things that are so important.
Mhm.
We had some of the most beautiful conversations, and she was kind of the heart of our family and started so many traditions for all of us. And every visit, felt like another small goodbye.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. We've talked about that, many times, and what really stuck with me was how long that grief really lasts.
Yeah, it certainly does. And, because you're grieving someone who's still physically there.
Mm,
And,
so hard.
that changes you.
Mhm.
And I know, that I'll never be the same because of that experience. And, while I was carrying that grief, everything else in my life was changing too.
Yeah, so, one of the many similarities that
Mhm.
you and I have, you'd been married for 23 years, so, over 2 decades like me, and that is an entire chapter of our lives.
For sure. An entire chapter. You build a family together. We had a business together, obviously a home together. Thought we had a future together, together, together. And when that ended, it's not just the loss of a marriage; it's the loss of your entire identity.
Yeah, and again, it's just I think we both, um, really experienced that, and 2 decades, over 2 decades is a lot of time, but I remember one conversation we had, and you said something that really stuck with me, not that everything you say doesn't stick with me because you're so wise, um, but you said, "I'm really grieving a life I thought I was gonna have."
That's exactly it, and that's something, not everybody talks about. Sometimes the thing that you're grieving isn't what just happened,
Mm,
it's what you thought was going to happen, the
mhm,
future you had pictured for yourself, the dream home, the traditions we set within our family, the growing old together story. And here's what's complicated: you can know something isn't right and still grieve losing it.
yeah, and I think that's so important because so often we I feel like people think that if you're choosing the change, you don't still get to be sad and grieve that, you know?
Yep. That's exactly right, and you really do go through a really harsh grieving process, and sometimes choosing yourself still hurts.
Oh, it does, and I think for women in particular, it's hard, right? To
Mhm.
to choose yourself, because it does feel selfish. It's not, but it feels that way.
100%. And then there were my friendships, long-term friendships that I lost, and that one really hurt, and it really surprised me.
Yeah. Yeah, me too, and again, we've had a lot of conversations about the friendships of the previous life, the life that, that we're grieving, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Some people, and you can relate to this, Jen, were connected to the version of me that
Mhm.
existed before.
Right.
all of this. And then when I started making so many changes, learning to set boundaries, getting sober, becoming more honest with myself, unfortunately, not everyone came with me. And that was really painful,
Mm.
but it also showed me who my real friends were, the people who stayed through that messy middle, the people who didn't just love the polished version of me or the fun version of me, but the real me.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that, again, often the case in life that when you lose something, you also can gain a lot. So you've lost friendships, which is hard, but I think you really gained some really good relationships through that as well.
No doubt about it. And I'm so incredibly grateful for that, because what I learned is that your circle might get smaller, but it gets stronger. And that's where you came in.
Best thing that ever happened to you.
Definitely. But hey, let's not get too carried away.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
Our friendship became such a gift during that season because neither one of us was interested in pretending that everything was fine.
Nope.
We had so many real conversations, the kind that might make you uncomfortable sometimes, but those are the kind that really helped us grow.
Yep. And I think we both have grown in tremendous ways and still work to do, right? That never
Absolutely.
stops.
Yep.
But, somewhere in the middle of all of this, you made a huge decision and you kind of brushed by this one quickly, but you got sober.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's about a year and 8 months at this point, and that's something I'm the most proud of.
Yeah. And you should be.
Yeah.
But, like, why would you say that? You know, a lot of change.
Yeah, because I walked through the hardest time in my life awake.
Mm,
I wasn't numbing it. I wasn't trying to escape from it. I wasn't trying to avoid it. I sat with it and just felt it, the good, the bad, the ugly. And that was incredibly hard.
oh, it is because that's the time that it's so easy to go the opposite way.
Hmm.
So, in that moment, kinda what made you had you make that decision?
Yeah, good question. I had been in therapy for a while and I'd made so much progress, but that sobriety was the thing I just kept avoiding. I kept pushing it back. I think I'm fine. I think I'm
Mhm.
fine. But, if I'm really being honest, being kind of semi retired, an empty nester, it just gave me so much unstructured time, which did not work in my favor.
Yeah.
I started feeling like I was constantly recovering from my life instead of actually living it. And one day, this was the hard part. I looked at myself in the mirror and I didn't recognize that woman anymore.
Yeah.
No, that was hard.
Yeah. And, again, conversations that we've had, that's one of the hardest things is looking in the mirror.
Hmm.
I did the same and thinking, "Wow, where did she go?" And I want back,
Yeah.
But looking in the mirror is hard, but it's so powerful to
It's
do that.
incredibly powerful, because I realized I was completely losing myself. And
Mhm.
sobriety forced me to gain some clarity and to meet myself straight on, the real version of me. And that woman underneath all those distractions I had put in place, it forced me to sit with all of that grief, all the fear that I had, all the anger that I had, the sad, lonely times. But it also showed me about resilience
Mm,
that I didn't know I had.
yeah. Resilience, that's again, that's a hard one, but when I look at you, you are resilient and somebody completely different.
I feel completely different. And, I feel like a little butterfly coming out of her cocoon.
Oh.
I used to think safety meant keeping everything together perfectly. And now I have a totally different mindset on that. It's knowing I can survive even when things are falling apart.
Mhm.
And today, I can report I have a beautiful home I love.
You
I
do.
I do. A job I genuinely enjoy, amazing friends, and guess what? The biggest and the best. I just found out I'm gonna be a grandmother.
Oh, to a little boy. No,
Sweetness.
I get emotional every time that we think about that,
Yeah.
talk about that.
Oh, me too. For the longest time, because for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. That's a good feeling, and I
Mm,
I think that's why we're doing this podcast, right? Not because we have all the answers, by far, we don't, but because we've learned that life can fall apart, but still become beautiful again.
yeah, and that is a lot of what we want to share with people, is the hope. And, this first episode, we just wanted to kind of tell our stories, right? And introduce ourselves and a little snippet of what we've learned,
Mhm.
but more to come on that.
Yeah, for sure. So, before our next episode, we want to leave you with something. Not really a challenge, not homework, just an invitation. Grab a notebook or notes app on your phone, whatever works for you, and draw a line down the middle of the page. And at the top of the column, write what I love. And at the top of the other, what I want more of.
Yeah. And really sit with that. Take some time to think about this because think it's easy to take these assignments. What am I grateful for? Gratitude journaling, all so very important. But sit with it. And this is not about what society says you should want, what Facebook and TikTok and Instagram say you should want, not what someone else wants for you, but what you want for you. So start with what you love, your family, your health, your home, friendships. Maybe it's morning coffee on your porch. Like sometimes we forget the little things and
Mm,
overlook the little things, but nothing is too big and nothing is too small when you do this exercise.
I love all of that. And then you move to the second column. What do you want more of? More confidence? Maybe more energy? More peace? Love some adventure? Maybe a stronger marriage, healthier body, maybe a whole new career, a bigger dream. Write it all down.
Yeah, just write it down. There's so much research that the act of writing things down changes how you think about it, the reminders, that it gives you. But super important is don't judge yourself on any level for what's on that list because wanting more does not make you selfish. It doesn't make you ungrateful. It simply makes you honest.
Yeah, exactly. The goal isn't to focus on what's wrong, it's to celebrate what's already good while getting clear about where you want to grow.
Yep. Because that's where the change starts. What do you want? There's no guilt. There's no shame. We're not beating ourselves up. We are just looking honestly with awareness of what we really want.
That's the key point. And before we wrap up, we want you to ask yourself one more question. And this is a big one. If your life looked exactly the same 1 year from today, would you be excited about that or disappointed?
Mm, love, love, love that question. Um, and if your answer is disappointed, don't make that mean that something is wrong with you. Just let it be information. Let it be facts because awareness is where transformation begins. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in our next episode.
That's right. So, gratitude is the foundation, not the finish line. You can be deeply grateful for your life, but still want more, more joy, more peace, more purpose. And there's that word again, more alignment.
Mm,
And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in our next episode.
we are. And if this conversation resonated with you, we sure hope that it did. We have one favor to ask. Share this episode with someone you love, a friend, a daughter, a sister, your mom, a coworker, someone who might need the reminder that it's okay to be grateful for your life and still want more from it.
Because chances are, if you needed this conversation, someone else does too.
Absolutely. So thank you for spending this time with us today. We know your time is valuable and we're incredibly grateful you're here with us.
And we can't wait to refine our lives together and do it unapologetically.
Absolutely. So until next time, Gina, I love you big.
Jen, I love you to pieces.
And we love each of you. Remember, it's okay to be grateful for what you have while creating what comes next. And never, ever, ever apologize for refining your life like you mean it.
I love that. See you next time.